us today. We're going to get started with our press conference, Q&As. Please say your name and the name of the outlet you work with before placing your question. And we're open. John.
Hi, John Hemmerdinger with Flight Global. Thank you all for doing this. I didn't hear any mention this morning at all, I don't think, of Energia. And that was big talk of the company just until fairly recently. There was also some mention of, Luis, of these future technologies being further away than might have been previously thought. I'm wondering, has there been a shift at all? Is there any thought that perhaps the Energia products are a little bit further away than maybe they previously were said?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Energia, we continue working on Energia projects. I would say that what we have learned in recent interactions with customers is to move towards bigger airplanes. So we started talking about 9, 19, 30, and we hear, and it's understood, right? Seat mile cost is the name of the game in commercial aviation. So we're now focusing on 50 seaters, but they are not products. They're platforms we use to develop technologies, and we continue to have them as a guideline to think about the technologies and how we would design such airplanes, right? In terms of technology, yes, for instance, in terms of timeline, our fuel cell hydrogen powered airplane beforehand, we used to say could be ready by 2035. We now say more towards 2040. So yes, there is a little shift towards the right, given the natural challenges of technology development, be it batteries, be it fuel cells, or But we continue to, as I said, to have projects, technology development projects, to be ready when the time comes, if this is the company strategy in the future. Arjen, if you want to add something?
Well, yeah, you talk a lot about technology. I think what we keep doing is talk to partners and customers. And I think to Luis Connor's point, the biggest discussion we have with customers is really what is the use case for this segment? Because we've seen, if you look at the past, a lot of the small aircraft have disappeared from the stage. And of course, that was because of the cost level to operate those smaller aircraft. Now, the biggest question, can you do that cheaper with green technologies, which is probably not the case. So that's also where the drive comes from, that you need to look at slightly bigger gauge to make that work. So to Luis' point, we also continue to talk to the customer and at least try to understand better where the market's heading in this field.
Hi, Steve Trimble with Aviation Week. In the last couple of years, we've heard complaints from the Brazilian aerospace industry. I think it was the Defense Industry Association filed a lawsuit against Boeing for rating engineering talent. Embraer, one of your engineering services suppliers, has complained about similar issues with retaining talent. So, for the engineering core with Embraer, do you have any concerns about maintaining that talent, retaining it, as well as with your engineering services providers like Embraer? What's the situation now, and how can you keep them there? In the absence of, Embraer is certainly keeping some of them occupied, but a big, huge project like we've seen in the last 20 years.
Well, we of course were very concerned about the way Boeing was aggressive in the marketplace. They created an engineering office in São José dos Campos after knowing our engineers during the carve-out process. So they were really targeting specific individuals and hiring, 10 guys of each and every one of the engineering specialties, right? So we believe that does not, of course we support the free market and the freedom of work, but a targeted approach is something that we we don't support. And the associations in Brazil have created it's called Ação Civil Pública, which is a public civil action against Boeing. So it was not, of course, support. Embraer supports that, but the organizations did initiate that. But of course, our job is to retain people, is to engage people, and we have been very successful engaging our people, and we fully retain the core of our engineering, so we have not lost capability, and I don't think we will lose capabilities. It's crazy how things change, but Boeing is currently firing people in São José dos Campos after this global movement of reducing their workforce. But our main action really is to engage people and create opportunities, challenges, and career opportunities so that they stay. So this is our main focus, and I must say we have been quite successful in doing that.
Addison, Sean, and Air Insight. A two-part question, and I don't know if I guess it's for Ariane. The turboprop, is that market dead, do you think? Where do we go with that? My follow-up then is, looking forward for Embraer, which is the more exciting market, China or India?
Regarding, thanks Addison. Well, the turboprop market is not dead, but I think the product that we were looking at is definitely, and I think I mentioned that before, in the deep freezer now, right? And the reason for that was we were looking at an engine at the time, the engine was not available, and we still didn't figure out to fly an airplane without an engine. So that's why we vacated that, and I don't think we're going to change that anytime soon, Louis, unless you have news today there. On the markets, China and India, we don't have to take that decision. I think we've been very clear to the market over the last couple of years that we're looking at partnership. We're talking to both sides, both China and India. We believe there's a great market for the E-Jet product there, and we're very much willing to work in partnership, but I think you have to give it a little bit of time before you have the clarity. I don't know, Francisco, if you want to add anything?
I think Bosco wanted to say something about India.
No, I think around India, of course, we are looking in a very close way this market. As I mentioned, we are competing there for a big fleet of C-39. We are already decided to invest in India, open a Embraer office, one Embraer office there, not a defense office, but one Embraer office that we will have a presence of commercial side, service and support, defense in this office. It's a very strategic market to us. We are seen as a hub to us in the region, and we are already serving the Indian Air Force with some IAWs airplanes, so they are very happy with the level of service inside of our business unit. So again, I think India is a very strategic market to us.
Question for this side of the room. Sorry, guys. Curious, as you think about new product development, and you're currently in sort of this process of deliberating between a large business jet, a large commercial aircraft, from our side of the world, what markers should we look for from you all as you deliberate through that process, as you kind of think through engaging with the market, thinking about technology and all that? And also, to this point, is this a binary choice? Is it one or the other, or is there a more sequenced view here? Obviously, Bombardier overextended themselves massively through Global 7500, 8000, all that, while doing C-Series concurrently. Is that a lesson that you bring to this? And ultimately, is no choice also an option?
Want to start? You, John, always come with those good questions, right? So, John, as I have mentioned to you, as a OEM, we are always making studies about new products, right? What would be the next steps for Embraer? Luis mentioned that during his presentation. But what we are doing now, besides these studies, the commercial field, business jet field, we are really investing in new technologies to keep our readiness for a new product. This is what we are doing now. So we are putting even more money this year in those technologies, the 6 innovation verticals to enable Embraer, to do a new product in the future. But at this point of time, we don't have a plan, a concrete plan to go this way or that way. Those guys are fighting for resources, right? Michael, he wants to build a bigger plane. Arjen, but at this point of time, we don't have any decision about what we are going to do.
As far as one or the other, or, I mean, is there a universe where you do both? I mean, how are you thinking about the lessons of other OEMs here?
I think this is it will depend on a lot of factors, right? I mean, to have the right product, the right funding strategy, the right. Again, we're not at that point to make a decision what to do. We are just making studies, and our focus now is really to sell the products we have. As I shared with you, we have a plan. We see a potential to grow this company, 65% in the next 4 to 5 years with the products we have, without eVTOLs. So that's why we're doing at this point of time. This is our focus at this point of time. I know, do you want to add?
I was going to add something that you may have heard what Luis Carlos said. We take very seriously in regards to, we don't do Me Too. When you look at the phenoms to take the market share, John, right in that segment, and now the creators that are doing the same in the segment for both corporate flight departments, individuals, and fractional. It's because the product has been differentiated with something that adds value to the customer. So these 6 verticals are trying to say, what's the next differentiator that allows us to unlock and unleash the profitability, the customer profile for a new segment, regardless of the business. So we're holistically looking at it in an agnostic way to say, which one is the most differentiated, which one has the most value, what customers are going to pay for the R&D, that's the investment it takes to bring these to market. And when we figure that out with these 6 verticals, then you'll see a decision that unlocks that potential. And whether it's in one or the other, both or none, will be dependent upon that differentiation of value and the ability to fund the product to the market. You heard from FlexJet, they would love another big jet, right? So there's clearly indications, and as Arjen talked about, we're talking to the customers to make sure if Luis's team unlocks the potential of an innovation, will the customers pay for it? Will they buy it? Is it going to have the value proposition? So those linking characteristics are critical to making these billion-dollar type investments, right? And then how do we fund it? Is it a partnership? Is it a region? Right? Is it a launch customer? All those characteristics go into these decisions. And as Luis said, it's harder with the certification process, so you have to think about the entire life cycle of what you're bringing to market. And we're excited about it. So deep diving into these verticals of innovation and efficiency is going to unlock the solution. And that's what you should be excited about. That's what you should be writing about.
By the way, we should not forget, we are developing the eVTOL. Not that we are stopping doing nothing. We are in the hottest phase of the eVTOL right now.
With the 1,000 people working, right?
That's it.
Up and forward.
Arjen, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you summarized it greatly. What I will say is the big question is always, is there customer demand? And I think if you listen, I know you guys have been going around the market on a daily basis, whether you talk about commercial, whether you talk about executive, whether you talk about any of these things, there is a clear demand out there in the market. So I think that's the starting point. We need to make up our mind what we want to do. We're going to take some time to do that.
Edward Russell, freelance. Arhan, one for you. You talked a bit about E2 and the U.S. market and how scope clauses have not eased because the E175 has been so great. But regional fleets are largely scoped out in the U.S. You mentioned that there will need to be progression to E2. How do you see that progression to the E2 or the next generation regional jet happening? Is it going to be on your side? You mentioned, do we reduce seats? Do we reduce MTOW? Or is it going to be a base scope side? Can you give us a little more details on that?
Well, I think we could probably carve out an hour to talk about scope clauses, which I'm not going to do. But what I will say, the scope clauses of each of the different majors is not the same, right? So there is clearly room to grow a little bit more with the growing fleets. There's clearly some aging equipment out there. Also, what I mentioned when I spoke this morning is that the 50-seater market is really reducing. The aircraft are getting older. Some of them are ending up in the desert. Some are coming back right now. So we do keep service income of those aircraft. So I think within the current scope clause, the 175 V1 is greatly placed, and we see a very steady market ahead of us if you look at replacement and further growth. We can speculate a lot what's going to happen to the scope clause. I think so far, even on max takeoff weight, which there's not a lot of logic to that. The proven 175 V2 was not an extension of seats; it was just an extension of max takeoff weight, which didn't happen. So I think max takeoff weight, is the low-hanging fruit, which is already tough. Changing the seat, it's even tougher. So I think we'll have to see how it pans out, what the economy will bring in the next couple of years, if the airlines are willing to have that discussion. For now, I don't see any change coming, to be honest. If you want to have a meaningful reduction of fuel burn per seat, you're probably going to have to look at a combination of that seats and max takeoff weight. And then there is definitely technology in the E2 sphere that you can use. But for bringing E2s into the market, we don't need the scope to change. We can bring the 195 E2 today. We're showing it with Porter flying into the US. And we're talking to several airlines, and they see the greatness of that product, but we'll have to be patient for some airlines to bring it over the line.
Just one follow-up. So when you say you don't see anything coming now, are you saying, by 2028, 2030?
Well, that's why I was happy that the question was about the next 20 years, because it gives me a bit more dreaming space. I think in the next, let's say 4 to 5 years, I don't think it's going to change.
Gabriel was with Reuters. A couple of commercial aviation questions. How are the efforts going to introduce the E2 here in the US? You now have in Mexico and Canada flying. Mexico actually is going to fly soon the E2s, but still it hasn't been introduced in the US for a US airline. And how are talks going in Latin America to notch more clients there? We heard some chatter about LATAM Go potentially buying Embraer planes. Is this still a possibility? How's the Latin American market for the E-jets?
Yeah, so, well, in North America, I think we are very pleased that Porter has taken the bold jump to bring E2 operations into the US, so the product is visible for the US citizens. We strongly believe that the 195 E2 is a great complement also for the US. It's the most efficient complement to the narrow-body aircraft out there, especially if you look at A319 still flying around, 737-700s that are flying around. The economics of that aircraft are way off from what we can offer with a 195 E2. In the past, there were always some discussions about complexity. We believe with the EBITDA gap that we can offer with a 195 E2 to complement these bigger narrow bodies, you can allow quite some complexity before you run into negative margins, right? So I think the 195 E2 is a great opportunity. We'll just have to give it some time for the airlines to take the decisions. On Latin America, I think Brazil, and that's what I was referring to this morning, Brazil is a great example on how you can connect a very big country with operations in very small airports. That's the way to boost your economy. If you look at the airlines that are operational in Brazil, Azul is flying the 195 E2 side by side with the much bigger A320 and 321neos. They're telling the markets openly that they see a huge gap in trip cost differential and very similar seat cost. And if you look at the EBITDA that these airlines that Azul is creating, we all know they're in a little bit of a struggle with the balance sheet financing. But if you look at the operational performance of these airlines, largely also thanks to the 195 E2, it's amazing. And we believe that there's a huge potential for other airlines in the region to embrace that same potential.
Another question over there, on the far left.
Hi, just a defense question. Now that Sweden has committed to buy the C390s. Do you think there will be any movement on the Brazilian side about extending the first batch of Gripens, orders for Gripens, or even moving forward with the second batch?
Thanks for the question, Steve. I cannot talk on behalf of Brazilian Air Force and Brazilian government, but you know that we have a strong relationship with Saab, and we are following this very close with them. What we heard together in Natal a couple weeks ago is that the Brazilian Air Force would like to keep the Gripens as a solution, as a fighter solution. They are planning to evolve with the conversation with Saab to add additional Gripens on their fleet. But that's what I can say around of that.
So does that mean that the Air Force isn't looking at the used F-16s anymore?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Brazilian Air Force told to Saab that they would like to keep Gripens. That's what I said.
Any other questions?
Yes, Scott Hamilton with Liam News for Luis. You talked about automated takeoff. We, of course, know automated landing's been around a long time. But as you get into more automation, isn't there a concern that the skill levels of the pilots are going to degrade? We've seen some accidents where that seemed to be a contributing factor.
It's this is a very good point, and we have to have provisions to allow the pilots to keep their skill level. Even today, you know, if you go to standard operating procedures of a big airline, you rotate the airplane, autopilots, and you take the airplane out of the autopilot really at the decision height, so seconds before you touch down. So that's why there are recurring trainings and simulator trainings and so forth. So I don't think it's a new problem, but it's something to continue to take care of, I would say. On the other hand, we know that automation improves the safety, right? It allows more time and brain with it for the pilots to take decisions, to manage the flight. If they had to fly or hand fly the airplane, they would have less time, you know, to understand the scenario and take the right decision. So automation is good for the safety, that's proven, provided we take care of pilot skills through continuous training.
I know that this was mentioned in the earnings call, but I'd like to ask again, with Embraer's plan to have a bigger footprint here in the US, do you see any impact at all from the new administration's policies? Trump, he has plans for higher tariffs. You know, you want to sell the KC to the US. You want to more US airlines to buy the E-jets. Any impact at all from the new administration's potential policies?
Can take this one. We do, at this point of time, Gabriel, we do not anticipate any big issue. Because what we said before, right? We have been here for 45 years. We have more than 3,000 qualified jobs, $3 billion in assets. Our E-175 ones basically is the only aircraft, real jet, compliant with the scope clause. So if they increase tariff, you make aircraft more expensive, tickets will be more expensive. So we have plans to grow our presence in the US. The C390 Bosco said before, it's a great opportunity. If you sell to the US Air Force, we'll make these aircraft in the US, depending on the quantities of the aircraft. So again, we cannot say yes or no at this point of time, but we are not anticipating any issue because of this long-term relationship benefiting both sides, you know, US and you and Embraer.
And just one point I forgot to mention in my presentation over there. I think it's important to emphasize that we buy from US more than we sell. Inside of the C39, more than 50% of the airplane is made here. So again, with a final assembly line here, we're gonna be Buy American Act. So I think it's important to contextualize that. That's the reason I mentioned over there that we are a Brazilian American company. So
It's the same for commercial aviation.
Yeah. Also, the E1 and E2, the majority in value comes from the US.
It's just to a point that we have even the ECA in US to support us to export aircraft, because we do have the bill of material high US content anyway.
Yeah, one of the most important things, and I know Nafel can jump in here as well, the customers will have a loud voice as to who we are to them because of our MRO network and our service center network. And so when you have owned service centers and authorized service centers that are based in the United States, and our customers that are flying all of our products are getting served here in the United States, it speaks volumes to the revenue and job and economic creation that we as a company bring to North America and specifically the United States. I don't personally anticipate any impact.
Yeah, just expanding, like the footprint we have for MRO here is expanding more and more. And then I was talking with Francisco, like I think I have more American mechanics than any other nationality.
Any other questions?
Hi, thank you. This is a question, Johan, about you.
Thank you.
It's a basic one. Can you just talk a little bit about what you're doing in terms of public perception? Well, first, like where you're planning, what city you might be rolling this out to, and then what you're doing for like the masses to educate them on how this will be used. I also was wondering what the use will be for private aviation. So like, do you see being able to take an eVTOL from, down here to your FBO, or like from rooftop to rooftop, or a lot of people just on a basic level are having a hard time wrapping their heads around what it's gonna look like.
Thank you, Jennifer. Well, the fact is that we're creating a new segment, right? New industry, and I think there's various application for this eVTOL, right? It's all about the business model, and the way that we looked at it is definitely for mass transportation. This is the ultimate goal, because like I said, we don't want to be substituting few helicopters. We really want to make the change. This is the vision, is reimagining the human connection by providing a safe and reliable means of urban mobility. Okay, so this is the end game, but I agree with you that there's a journey, and this journey starts with just getting to know exactly and put the customer in the center, but also the end user. And we've done 6 CONOPS, right? Concept of operation. This is what we call it. It's like, how's that going to run? How's it going to work? Obviously, it's going to be way more intense in terms of utilization than helicopters. But what you do is you take a helicopter and you just have a code, a flight code. You sell the tickets, $30, $50. The leg. You do it. We've done it in Rio, we've done it in Chicago, we've done it in London. We've done it in various places. Different focuses every time. If it's the embarking, disembarking. If it's more the ground operation. If it's more the recharging, how you simulate. So we've done this, and we had some good, and great insight. Right? Insight that we wouldn't imagine having, or at least when you do it, you're like, oh, okay, something that we got to think about. But not Eve, the whole industry. I mean, again, it's not about the vehicles, it's about the ecosystem. So one example, we were doing this in Rio, and then I think I was mentioning this earlier on with you, and then yes, we were starting to have the 4 patches in a helicopter. From Barra de Tijuca, right, in Rio, and then going to Galeão, which is the airport, and having those 6, 7, 8 flights, right, a day, and then people would just show up, just like they grab a cab, or they want to transfer. They see the flight. Oh wow, this is good. This is an alternative for me to go beat the traffic. And then next thing you know, there's someone totally drunk that shows up at 9 o'clock in the morning. how do you handle this, right? Something that you don't really think about it, nowadays in a normal, common operation. Or someone that, brings a gun. I'm like, oh my God, okay, well, just like because they had it in the car, and then he wants to bring it, well, you gotta think about all this. This is very serious operation, and again, it's not just putting an eVTOL, we're not talking about Jetson here. It's a flying car, I like to call it flying car, because eventually it will be, but it's not there, not yet. And before we do this, it's all about safety about the people, the passengers, right? But also on the ground, it's the ecosystem, how the operators will handle this. And we're on the path. We've been doing, with our customers, exactly this type of ConOps to understand what will be adapting the current operation. And it's easy when you're at the airport, because you kind of extend this to the operation that we have, to the eVTOL. But when you're just on the helipad, and then not only now you're going to be transporting 10 people, or 3 or 4 people a day, and now it's going to be dozens of them, right? So it's going to be safe, and this is what we've been doing, ConOps, and also talking to all the stakeholders. So footprint of the ecosystem is super important. All the stakeholders, you have to talk to all of them. And we want to do it the right way because it's dedicated to each city, each county, at the airport level. This is the type of ecosystem you need to have. It's called micro ecosystem. One stakeholder is not engaging, you're not going to have an eVTOL operation. One authority not giving you the permit on time, you don't have the 12, 15 lead time that you need to have the power grid connected. So that's why it's good. We've all been talking about certification of the aircraft. But preparing the ecosystem, it's very important for us. Otherwise, we're going to be delivering aircraft and then they're going to be sitting there and not having the high utilization that we need to have.
I'm going to add to your second part of your question, because we do a lot of studies. Luis and I have the privilege of being on Johan's board as the internal member, so we have a visibility into some of the exciting things that he is bringing to market. And when you really think about the urban concept that they're unlocking and saving the time for passengers, now you can start to say, how do you apply that to the different types of passengers, right? To your question, if you have a Phenom or Praetor and it's sitting at FBO, then you're saving the time of the traffic that takes the 2 hours to go from the Hamptons to the FBO, right, in traffic, versus the 8 minutes it's going to take in the E100. So that's the first mile, last mile for a private scenario. And the same thing if it's a Praetor. But it also can take you to a major hub at JFK or LaGuardia or to Newark, and it gets on to an E-jet. So the construct of saving traffic time can be commuter consumer based, or it can be business aviation and business travel in the case of commercial. That's getting the passengers to their destinations. And if they have a solution that's private for the long haul, and they normally would be getting into a Uber or a private car or their own personal car or a rental, now they're getting into an Eve. And now you can keep having an end-to-end ecosystem. And that's why it's so important to tie back to Johan's comment. Then you better have the ecosystem solved so that that end-to-end can be what they experience. Very excited.